All righty. Thanks for coming down today. Feels kind of silly to be so far away from you. It's your big room, but this was the only room that was available at this time. So here we are. My name is Marcus. I am a PhD candidate in SAFs here. And welcome to our second workshop in this sort of application tips series as part of the LEAPS. That's our learning and professional skills series. And today we're going to be talking all about summer opportunities because those deadlines are coming up pretty soon. And so today we're going to be emphasizing kind of how to find those opportunities, what to expect, and then where to get help with those applications when it comes time. So just to get a sense of who's in the room, can you raise your hand if you're like a first year student, second year, third year, fourth year? Okay, and then marine bio majors, AFS majors, oceanography, something else? Shout it out. Okay, cool. So today we are going to be talking about sort of the landscape of opportunities. So what's out there, and then how to find those opportunities. Then we're going to talk about what those common components are of the applications for these opportunities. We're going to do a very quick exercise where we're going to basically implement those first two bullets into you finding an opportunity on your own. And then we're going to be talking about the universal experience of rejection and some strategies for how to handle that as you're going through this process of applying for lots of different things as an undergrad. I also want to start this with a disclaimer, which is just that this is based on my own personal experience navigating this process. And so this will not necessarily be reflective of everyone else's experience as well. And so things that are relevant to today, we're going to be talking about today. I am from the West Coast. I'm from California. I did undergrad in California and moved up here for grad school. So I have a pretty strong West Coast bias in terms of the things that I know about. I was a marine biology undergrad, and now I'm a grad student in a fisheries program. And what sort of guided my search in the past when looking for experience and opportunities is that I've always been interested in doing research in some form or fashion, usually probably at like an academic or government institution. And I'm also interested in teaching. So these are the kind of the places that I'm coming from when I'm talking about opportunities in this space. And so I want to begin with talking about just like what's out there. So what's this rough landscape? And I'm going to be talking exclusively right now about paid opportunities. So there's sort of this back route to finding experience as an undergrad, which is to like just kind of ask people if they have ways that you could be involved with their lab, their research, their work. That's usually in a volunteer basis. We're not going to talk about that route. So today we're talking about official things that you can find and you can apply for and you'll get paid for. And so we're going to be talking about, I think about this in sort of like three broad categories. These are more like things on a spectrum, more so than they are like discrete categories, but I still think it's a useful heuristic for sort of trying to describe the differences between different things you'll find for the summer. So we'll talk about internships. Then we'll talk about a specific type of internship called a research experience for undergrads. And then we'll talk about seasonal jobs. So starting with internships, these are things that you'll find with lots of different organizations. So these are sort of like your more traditional thing when you hear your friends who are in different majors talking about internships, kind of more like those, right? So they're kind of all over the place. They tend to focus on different things, whatever the organization does, could be research, could be SciComm, management, et cetera. They're usually for like 8 to 10 weeks. They may sometimes include housing and travel. And here are just a few examples of kinds of institutions that I found that offer internships. So MBARI stands for the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute. They have a summer internship program at their facility down in Moss Landing, California. This is a nonprofit oceanographic research institution. That's like one kind of place you would find these. Anchor QEA is an environmental consulting firm. They also have internships for people. This is based in Seattle. And down in Oregon, Oregon Sea Grant, so like NOAA's Sea Grant office runs a summer scholars program that's really structured like an internship. You have about 10 weeks down there. And typically you're going to find that these things, the applications are going to be due around February through May, typically. So that's just the first very broad category. The second I want to talk about is this program called NSF REU. Can you raise your hand if you've heard of this before? Great. So NSF stands for National Science Foundation. They fund a lot of different basic research in the United States. And REU stands for Research Experiences for Undergraduates. So this is a national program, but what it does is it funds these research experiences for undergrads at specific institutions and labs all over the country. So the structure is typically around this 10-week research experience in a small cohort of students from across the country. They are all paid. You'll get a stipend for all of them. They will also provide you travel to and from the institution and housing. And this is a pretty massive program that supports lots of active programs across the country and all sorts of different research areas. And these applications are due pretty early, typically February and March. I just threw up a few examples of places that I'm aware of that offer these programs up in Friday Harbor or out in the East Coast. Yeah, it's not a question.
This is entirely separate from actually taking classes at Friday Harbor. They just have to use the same facility.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, so you'll see a lot of these REUs are offered. The majority of them are offered by universities, but they're not like 4-credit classes. They are separate things that are run by faculty within that institution.
Okay.
That's a great question. Thanks for clarifying that. Yeah. Not that I'm aware of, no. So they are typically, yeah, the compensation you get is not in the form of course credit, but money typically for these. There may be some back ways to turn that into credit with talking to your advisors, but I'm not aware of that, no. Any other questions? And these slides will all be posted on our website, fish.uw.edu/leaps. So don't worry about jotting down all this information as we're talking about it. Okay, one more category is kind of seasonal or field tech jobs. So these are going to be advertised as jobs, not internships or research experiences, but they're typically going to come with the label of like seasonal, temporary, or part-time. And so you'll find these with lots of different universities or government agencies. So like WDF&W will have lots of positions like this, USGS, Fish and Wildlife, for example. They may come with housing and travel included if you're like working somewhere really remote, but often they're kind of expecting you to already be in that place where they're offering the job. And the big difference with these relative to internships and REUs is that your deadline is going to be way later. So they're going to be much more like a normal job hiring process where they post an announcement. There's like 2 weeks to apply. You apply, you hear back pretty soon after, and then you start quite soon after that. So here's an example that I found last year. This was this is WDF&W offering for non-permanent. So again, it's that keyword that indicates to you that it's like a summer or temporary thing to do freshwater monitoring. So going out, in this case, it talks about sport fishery monitoring. So working with sport fishery in Washington, appointment length 3.5 months. In this case, kind of pixelated here, but this one was one starting in February. And you'll notice that the posting date was in December 22nd. So that lag is like 1.5 months. That's going to be a lot more typical for these sort of summer things. So if you're looking for something for the summer, you're not going to find these just yet, but they will come available later in the year. Okay, pause for questions on sort of this landscape and what to expect from different things across the spectrum. Yeah.
So the paid ones, is there like a scale for it, or do they just go by minimum wage for hours?
It depends. So like in this case, they are listing a salary. It's often commensurate with experience. But typically with these sort of seasonal positions, they're going to be on the lower end of the pay scale, probably around minimum wage is typically what you're going to see.
No benefits, no healthcare, nothing.
Typically not, because it's listed as like a non-permanent thing. Yeah.
Basically just have to take like if, for example, I'm working a full-time job right now, I'd have to take like those times off to get away from that because there's no way I can have both. So
yeah. They're typically going to be full-time things. Okay. Yeah. I think in terms of like benefits and stuff, that might be on a case-by-case basis. In the past, I have not encountered that when I look for these things, but it may depend on the institution. Sure. Yeah. And get safe. Any other questions? Yeah. That's a great question. So I would say that of the categories I've talked about so far, these are probably getting the least applicants. I would say these sort of seasonal field jobs, partially because they're later, and partially because they're sometimes harder to find. So as we're going to talk about in a second about when we're talking about how to find these things, NSF for these opportunities, these are extremely competitive. I would say the success rate is probably around 5% as a whole. But it really depends on which one you're looking at. So there's some that are like, go to Bermuda and do like research with sea turtles, and it's like 1,000 applicants and like a very small fraction. And some of the less flashy sounding titles about, I don't know.
Puget Sound to go look at sea slugs.
Yeah, or like genomics or systematics or data analysis, those are going to find less, right? So this is like a giant program that's a pretty heterogeneous landscape, but these are typically quite competitive. And then we're talking about internships. This is really dependent on a particular opportunity. So I know that, for example, this one is also very competitive, kind of on the scale of like NSF, where they got, I think, I did this one a long time ago. But I remember that they were getting in the neighborhood of like 250 applications for 12 spots. So a lot of competition for these different things. Yeah, not to dissuade you, but
It's most well known and they're socially active. They have a whole bunch of like videos of them doing stuff, so everyone knows their name.
right. Yeah, and Bari is a cool Instagram account. If you haven't seen them before, they post lots of cool stuff. Okay, let me jump ahead to actually finding opportunities. The ways that I found are the most efficient and the least frustrating, because a very common experience is to just be like looking for stuff and find lots of things that you're not qualified for. You're like looking at some organization's website and you're finding stuff for people who are like 20 years past your experience level. So I'm gonna talk about some of the great aggregators and job boards and ways to find things as a student. Um, and I'm going to just briefly talk about this. And then instead of like, I have slides that'll be posted, which are great, but they're kind of boring. So instead of that, I'm going to demo these different things so you can see how they work. So in my experience, there are some really good job boards, or I'll call them like opportunity aggregators, because they're not all just jobs, that are great for student opportunities. So one is Texas A&M, of all places, has a natural resources job board that is known as being the best for finding jobs in the natural resources. So this has a lot of like fish and marine science jobs, but also forestry and all kinds of other stuff like that. There's a website called Pathways to Science that has a lot more of these sort of research focused things. And then UW has a portal called Handshake, which is going to help you find like customized opportunities to your particular skill level and interests. Also plug listservs. So like all those emails you're getting from your advisors, please read them. Sometimes there's something really cool in there you don't want to miss. And there's also news websites for places like marine biology or School of Aquatic and Fishery Sciences. They have places where they will aggregate student career opportunities that they have heard of. Then we'll talk about organizational websites. So like going directly to some place you might want to work and looking there. And then we're going to navigate the NSF RAU portal. So let's just do this instead of looking at static slides. So can I zoom out? Okay. I'm just doing this, my Zoom meeting of one person, so that I can record this, because this is the best way I know to record things. And I'm going to reshare this window again. Okay, so let's start with, I'm just gonna, compromise password. Ignore that. Texas A&M, here we go. Natural Resources Job Board, hide this. And this is this portal you'll find. And if we click on it, Texas A&M has a really good natural resources fish and wildlife program. That's why somehow they've become sort of the clearinghouse for these opportunities. If we go to search for jobs, you will find this giant database. So these are 1,600 currently active postings across the whole country. So to help you wade your way through this, you can look at a bunch of different filters. So let's say we don't want to work in Texas. Let's say we want to work in Washington. And let's say we'll do that. And then we'll look for a keyword let's look for fish. Okay. I have no idea what we're going to find right now, but let's just try it. Cool. All right. So here's an example of like some of the kinds of things you'll find here. The Issaquah Hatchery, it's like half an hour from here. They're looking for people to help out with hatchery work. You'll notice the words non-permanent up here. So again, this is sort of one of those more temporary things that might be more suitable for you as a student. But again, because this is more of a job, you're going to notice that they published it 7 days ago. Applications are due today, and they want you to start in 2 weeks, right? So this job board has lots of cool stuff, but it's going to be a lot better for those types of seasonal jobs, things that were basically universities, state or federal governments are looking for help, often on a more temporary basis, right? So that is this aggregator. Super helpful, kind of overwhelming, but something you should definitely be aware of. Any questions on the A&M job board? Alrighty, let me switch over to Pathways to Science. It's just pathways-to-science.org. And so this is sort of like if you're more interested in a research track, this is a good place to go. And this is going to have a lot more of those internships and research experiences, but not so much jobs. So if you go to students, let's go to search our fully funded STEM programs. Wow, I'm already overwhelmed. Let me go to undergrads. Let's say I'm a junior. Let's go to, let's just say biology, because they don't have anything like marine specific. And let's just search programs. So yeah, go ahead. Oh, really? Cool. Cool. Thank you. I didn't actually know about this. Haven't used this in a while. Um, but let me just go back to this. So it's going to show up with a lot of different programs, and they're kind of, again, all sorts of different, more research focused programs for undergrads, and then filtering by different things, like you were saying, start dates, when that's available, can be really helpful for helping you narrow things down. Let me flip over to UW's Handshake thing. So Handshake, how many of you guys raise your hand if you've used Handshake before? I know they're like trying to push it on people, which is great because I think it's a cool platform. But right, this is sort of like tailored to you. So you have to give in your information about what your status is in terms of like where you are in school, what your interests are, etc. And then it'll show you a lot of cool jobs and stuff. So this is tailored to me. So this is not what you will see. But this is great for a lot of those more like more jobs and internships, not so much like that RAU program. That won't show up here. Questions on any of those three things I just showed? Okay. What else did I want to talk about? Listservs. Yeah. Okay. So what you see in your listservs also often gets aggregated on a news site. So if I just look up UW SAF's news, so that's my department, there's a news and events page. And what you'll find is really helpful is you can filter results by category and do things like find student career opportunities. So here are some recent things that were posted that basically my department heard about from someone who was like, hey, I want to get the word out about this thing that I'm hiring for. And so you can find a lot of things here, and they're going to be probably things that are maybe a little more under the radar than some of these big aggregators that everyone can find. Not true for this one because happens to be an RU program that's hosted here at SAFS. So that's going to be easy to find for everyone, but some of the other things aren't. So just keep an eye on those. Organizational websites. Yeah, let's talk about that. So let's say I wanted to look for things at NOAA. So I can just go to noaa.gov, and this is sort of similar for most organizational websites. But when you go to an organizational website, be it NOAA, be it an NGO, be it WDF&W, you're going to want to look for certain keywords on their website. It's usually going to be something like education, about us, contact us, get involved, something like that. And that's where you're going to want to look to find things that are relevant to you, right? So NOAA's big website is very public facing. If you go to this little apple, this is their education symbol. So that's the best thing we can find on this website. If we click here, oh, okay, there you go. Thank you for expanding that. If I go to education, hey, look, there's a little opportunities tab. And if I go here, there's actually a big student opportunities at NOAA database. So this is the kind of place you could go. And then basically, if you go through a similar process for organizations that you're interested in or think are relevant to you, this is where you can find things that are directly through that organization. It's another good way to find things. Okay, and yes, online portals for undergrad research programs like NSF REU. So here, I'm just going to Google the NSF REU program. And if I click here, this is just their homepage. It tells you all about this program. And we are students, so we want to look on the information for students side instead of the information for faculty side, because that second thing about faculty is more so for people who want to host these things. So if you go to information for students, it gives you lots more information about the program. And for finding an opportunity, they have this link here called the Directory of REU sites. So this is, again, going to be a big aggregator of opportunities that you can filter by location, research area, etc. So again, let me just look at, I'm just going to do biology. Maybe this is a more specific one, but I'm just going to do this for now. This is how you're going to find lots of these opportunities where if you start to click on them, you'll then find more information about that particular, wow, a broken link. Thank you, NSF. Try this one. Okay, cool. So it'll bring you to an external website from the institution that's hosting this program, where you can then find out lots more about their program, what they do, and then how to apply for it. Any questions about any of those? And we'll get a chance to play with this in a second, so. Alrighty, let me go back into slideshow mode. And again, I have a bunch of like static stuff here that'll be posted on the LEAPS website if you want to go back to this. That just kind of talks about these things. Okay. Yeah, so I just also want to note that it can be very easy to get discouraged by this search because you're going to find lots of things where you're just not quite the person that they're looking for in terms of, class standing or major, things like that. You'll kind of come across lots of things that are not that relevant to you. The worst part is sometimes when you find things like, oh, that sounds cool, but the deadline was last week. That stinks. But eventually, usually you'll find a few things that are really exciting and you want to file those away. But just be prepared for this log. Okay, so I want to spend about 10 minutes just so that we can all get a chance trying to explore these things. So if you just scan this QR code, that'll send you to these slides. Or if you go to our webpage, there'll be a lot of those helpful links. And I just want you to spend 10 minutes and go through one of these routes and find an opportunity that excites you. And the first thing I want you to do is check the eligibility to make sure that you actually can apply for it. And then I want you to look at some of the logistics stuff. So what's the deadline and what are the things you have to submit for that application? You do this on your phone, you do this on your computer, whatever works for you. And if you have any questions, just raise your hand and I'll come around and we can chat. All right, 10 minutes. So say. Right, so you have a few people that you have some connection with. That's good. So the way I would go about this is really just stay with those people. But to make your lives as easy as possible. Right. So I think what I've heard people would do as well, hopefully goes back to investors, is if you as someone you know, question to lay out very clearly something that for when those deadlines are, you sort of like what the format is. Is it like natural order? Is it that form they fill out, something like that? I know people even study like these aspects. They're the things that so I wouldn't be how to start with that when you're studying that, but when you the last few things in platforms, movies, then to them follow up. Here is breaking down this not people. Not the things you would do. So having self-spreadsheet is that help for the people that have found something and you figured out what the deadline of the components are for the application. Great, okay. 5 minutes or so. debrief. So I just am curious if I can get a volunteer to just like tell me something that they found, and then what the deadline was and what things that were that you needed the application. The volunteers.
Noah Hauling.
Okay.
The deadline is at the end of the month.
Okay.
Require 6 short essay responses.
Okay.
2 letters of recs, and then have to fill out one.
Right. Okay. Letter of rec, and then like a form. We'll call it. Cool. All right. That's like a scholarship. So cool. What else can people find?
So, I actually went to the UW's own website and found the, NOAA's Alaska Fisheries Marine Mammal Laboratory.
Cool.
And they don't have an opening just yet, but applications will be due probably in April.
April. Okay. Cool. So how are the pens in your work? That's just that's not a big word. Okay. April. Wow. April. Cool. What else we will find? Okay, 2 more things with staff.
I found an internship through the Perry Institute that's out of Bahamas.
Cool.
And it's due March 28th.
March 28th. Okay. And did you see what they wanted you to put in the application?
There is some short answers.
Okay.
And then there's like the GPA requirement. And then says some projects require the ability to scuba dive.
Okay. We're gonna call it special skills.
I don't know if it has, it's like a Perry Institute internship.
Cool. Sweet. How about just like general thoughts? How did that feel? Like bad. You want to elaborate?
I guess I try to have a lot of like going through specific organizations I'm interested in. I'm from Mount Vernon, and I've always really wanted to do stuff with like the GFA or Skagit Fisheries Enhancement Group. And or even like Snowshoes School, I really was finding like nothing applicable. So I was trying to go more like, okay, I'll go more like general, specific wasn't working. And then it's just like the overwhelming lot of options. So
Yeah.
The Washington Conservation Boards.
Yeah, totally. So I think my advice about going to an official website and looking there, it works the best for bigger organizations. People have like IT staff who make these sort of things, right? And so if you're looking at like a smaller NGO, smaller group that's a lot more local, you might have better luck just trying to find contact information and reaching out to them directly. Because they're not going to have the capacity to make this big database like those things. And they might not even have official programs in the same way that NOAA would as a giant government agency. They still might have payroll databases that might be in. Yeah. Any other thoughts or feelings of the planning process? Yeah.
I'm gonna name some, like, I think sometimes it helps if there's ones like specific to like your or underrepresented groups, or like underrepresented like geoscience. That I feel like it narrows down the field, or like maybe narrows down like who's applying. So I know like no, there's a really or there's like the LSAT program that's at Dev, or there's other things like
Yeah, totally.
yeah, so some focus on like indigenous studies, like as one. But I think that makes it feel like when it's more specific, like I don't know, the Ollie seems kind of intimidating because it encompasses like a lot of different geosciences. And when it's like either specific to your major or like a specific category of people that could apply, it makes it seem like okay, not so big. I don't know. I don't want to like discourage myself from applying to other ones, but like at least these I feel like more confident if it's like a smaller pool.
Yeah, totally. That definitely resonates with me, where it's like if you can find things that are more specific in terms of either eligibility or field, something like that, it is going to be, from a numbers perspective, probably a better shot. And it may also be somewhere that has additional support or mentorship that giant programs, right? So I would encourage you to look at those eligibility things. Yeah, like from the get-go, again, so I think number one, because it's important to know what you can waste your time on and also what things might be especially relevant to you. So yeah, thank you for saying that. Okay, we have about 20 minutes left. Any other questions that came up during this exercise? Yeah. Hold that question. We're going to talk about the quarter semester system conflict because I also went through a quarter system institution. It's a pain in the butt, but don't despair just yet. It's doable. Any other questions that I may or may not defer? Okay. So this is when I did this exercise on my own. Here are some things that I found. And these are representative of different types of opportunities, but these are primarily more so on the internship or RAU side because these are things that are already posted. So here is just sort of like a landscape of some opportunities and deadlines and then what they want from you, right? So deadlines, I found one that's already this month, scary. But most of them are February and March for different things, with I think a lot of the like more RAU and internship stuff being more on the earlier side of that. And then when you look across these things in terms of what they want from you when you're applying, they almost always want a CV, curriculum vitae, or resume, so just like your typical listing of experience. Usually you want a transcript. I put this category called statement, just like a written component is usually required. In this case, they're all required. And then references. So either like a letter of recommendation, multiple, or contact information. So basically like not wanting a letter right now up front, but having someone that they could reach out to ask questions of if you move along far in the process. Right. So these four things are typically where you're going to need to have for applications, and they're pretty common. So once you've gone through this once, you have a good starting point for the future things that are pretty similar. Alrighty. So I want to talk about timeline real quick. When should you be looking? As we saw, all these things are doing kind of soon. So you should probably start looking as soon as possible. And I would really recommend having some way to keep track of all these deadlines and application components. Like when I was undergrad, I had an Excel spreadsheet that was really useful for me. So I could just know like, when is everything going to be due? And often to take those deadlines and like work backwards from them. Like, okay, this is going to be due March 1st. When do I need to start on these different components to be able to feel not super stressed? And in the case of references, to give people enough time to do these things to help me out. Yeah, so I said this, but application components, especially letters and statements, take a long time. So letters of rec, guideline 3 weeks ahead of time is good. More is better. And statements, I would not recommend starting the week of, because the more rounds of feedback you get and the longer you take to develop that, the better it's going to be. Yeah.
That your spreadsheet besides just the deadline that was helpful.
Yeah, so I'd usually have like a column for what the opportunity was, description, location, start and end dates, links, and often like contact information. So these programs will usually list a point of contact where if you have questions about things like, hey, my last final is June 10th. You want me to start June 1st? Is there a way we can get around that? So having contact information in there is also helpful. For those people, it's like kind of their job to answer your questions. So those people are great resources when you have questions specific to an opportunity. So yeah. 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 Yeah.
So I'm. So I've only had a big lunch or hall classes for my first quarter pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
So I think so if you go to our website, we did a workshop on letters of rec last fall. There's a recording of in slides for, where we talk about this in a bit more detail. But generally speaking, more recent is better. But the most important thing is who can speak to me the best, right? Who knows me the best as an individual? And so as long as that person is sort of within the meets the criteria that that application is looking for a reference. So like often they'll say like, oh, there has to be someone who like maybe taught you, or maybe they want someone who like interacted with you and can speak to like your ability to perform this internship. That might be like a job supervisor, for example. Those people who know you the best are going to be your best options. And I wouldn't discount someone from a year or two ago just because you're now at a different institution. Alrighty, moving right along. For help with applications, again, this workshop is really focused on just like how do we find things and what do these things do. CV and resume things, or like writing a cover letter, those are things that are more general. And so you'll find a lot more help with those things at places like the UW Career and Internship Center. They have great resources and templates for these things that you can work off of. And then in terms of stuff that's a little more specific and tailored help, as I just mentioned, we have this website, and we had a letters of recommendation workshop that happened last fall. You can read more about and watch a video of. And we're going to be having a workshop next week. I apologize, this time doesn't work, but we'll try to record it. All about the writing portion of those applications. And then new this year, trying out a thing where we're going to have like kind of like calling them office hours. So this is where you can get some of that more tailored one-on-one help, where you could like bring an application, you could like bring a cover letter, or you could just say like, I'm looking for opportunities, I'm trying to find help finding those things. So I'm going to organize these things where we'll have snacks, and we'll have other grad students who have been through this process fairly recently and can help you out with those things. So these are some things I want you to be aware of moving forward for help with applications. Alrighty. To your question, navigating the quarter semester system conflict. This was me all the time when I was looking for things. And the unfortunate reality is that most universities are on the semester system, and therefore start and end dates are organized around those dates and not our dates. So we tend to end like, I don't know, 3 weeks to a month later than most institutions. And that can lead to a lot of conflicts when you're trying to find things, right? So just some general tips on how you might go about this. If you find opportunities that start before the end of the quarter, general rule of thumb is that the closer it is to our end date, the more likely people are going to be flexible, but it never hurts to ask, right? The worst they can say is no. So again, that point of contact for the program, reach out to them and ask about the dates being flexible. So for example, something I did when I was an undergrad, I actually just started and ended a week late for one of these programs, and they were okay with that. Another time I actually went to an orientation like in the middle of spring quarter, and then went back to the site once the quarter ended, and just ended a few weeks later. That can happen. You won't know until you ask, right? So if you ask about flexibility, starting late and end late, these kinds of things, you might find some success with that. So there's always like two sides of the coin, right? There's the actual internship or program, and then there's what you can do about it on the UW side. So you might also consider talking to professors and seeing if you could take like a final early or remotely, or like submitting something early. So trying to work those two sides can help you or give you the best shot of actually doing some of these things that start in late May or early June that we are not really set up to take on, right? But that's not always going to work. Sometimes you'll often just get a no. And in that case, remember, there's so many things out there. Just look for more opportunities, and especially looking at other institutions that are also in the quarter system. So like the University of California system, except for a couple of them are all in the quarter system. Oregon and Western Washington were all in the quarter system. So there's places you can look where you'll find more opportunities that align with our schedules. Yeah.
I was just writing in the last slide of the office hours, and February 5th is a Wednesday. On the Thursday or on the Wednesday? Slide says Thursday, February 5th.
There's one on a Wednesday and one on a Thursday. Let's see. Look at my calendar. Calendar. Okay. This is the wrong calendar. Let me go to my work one. All right, we have one Wednesday the 29th, and then we have one Thursday the 6th. So thank you for clarifying that. Appreciate it. Any other questions? Why does it keep doing this? Okay. Alrighty. I also think that this pertains to this point, which is that when you're looking for opportunities, I would encourage you to keep a very open mind when you're looking for things. So even if you have a specific idea of what you think you want to do, being open to different things that might teach you transferable skills is a really good strategy at this point in time. So like my first years of undergrad, I did things that were very terrestrial during the summer, but I still learned a lot of things that helped me get things down the line that were more marine, which is my eventual interest. I also just want to note that when you complete applications for things, you're going to find that those are very helpful for doing the next one. So just like applying for things is just a good strategy to not, take yourself out of the running for things that might actually end up being really interesting for you. Okay, I want to spend about 5 minutes here just talking about rejection because this is really inherent to this process. As we mentioned, we talked about the success rates for these opportunities are really, really low. And so you're going to not get the vast majority of things you apply for. That's just sort of the fact of the matter. And so I like this iceberg analogy for success in STEM because when you see like faculty, you hear from people in the field, you have people come in for career panels, all you see is that tip and you never see the rest of the stuff, all the things that they didn't do or how they got to where they are, right? So the first thing that I think helped me deal with rejection is to just recognize that this is a totally universal experience. If you're in the sciences, you're going to get rejected a lot all the time, whether you're applying for an internship, eventually grad school, or a grant, something like that. If you ask a professor of yours, like they have gotten rejected from a zillion things in their career. And the only way you won't get rejected is you don't try, right? So inherent to ambition or passion for the field is that you're going to get rejected because that's what's going to happen when you apply for things. So here's me, right? This is an incomplete list of things, rejections I received, right? So I was an undergrad, I applied for lots of different research assistant positions. I eventually got one, took me 18 months, but I got rejected from like 5 along the way. I applied for some scholarships, didn't get those. I applied for a job that was more like a seasonal job, didn't get that in California. I applied for this grad program and got rejected. Eventually I got in, clearly because I'm here now, but I got rejected from that. I applied for a graduate research fellowship, got rejected twice. I applied for a position with NOAA, got rejected from that. So I just want like to put this up there, just one example where like everyone has some list like this that you run into around here, right? So rejection is universal and try not to feel bad when it happens to you. And so just some strategies that I found helpful, again, for handling rejection. Just remember that your career path is almost certainly not going to go the way that you think it is right now. Certainly the case for me. I switched my major junior year. I didn't think I was going to end up here. Eventually I did through sort of like a series of fortunate events. And that's just sort of if you ask most people, that's kind of going to be what you're going to hear from them. Leading on support networks, really helpful, right? A lot of people, like everyone in this room is going to be in the same position. So commiserating with your friends or talking to your family about it is helpful. And then trying to take it personally is also really key, right? So if you don't take it personally, you can learn more from the experience, right? If you don't feel like it's a personal affront. If you get feedback, hopefully you do. If you don't, you can always ask. A good strategy can sort of be to wait to read that when you're a little more removed from sort of the emotional response to rejection. And this last goal is really, really important, is that such a big determinant of success is just like luck or factors outside of your control, right? So for example, with these internship programs, you have reviewers that are different for every application, and they just score your application depending on how they're feeling that day and when they read it, how much sleep they got, if they're hungry or not, bad mood, whatever, right? So there's a lot of things that you can't control that are going to play a big part in these things, right? So just focusing on what you can control is key. and just remembering that basic fact. And then, yeah, thinking about rejection as sort of a learning opportunity, trying to get feedback is always really, really useful. And then again, I've said this in different ways multiple times, but this idea of like taking the no and pivoting, right? These applications have a lot of overlap. You learn a lot by applying for things. And, a one rejection can be viewed as sort of like an open door to something new. And having an application in hand is going to make that next one so much more, so much easier to write, right? Okay, any questions? Okay, well, I would really, really appreciate it. We're kind of up at time now, but there's a QR code here for a Google form. And if you could just take a few minutes to fill this out and let us know how this went for you, that would be really helpful for helping us learn from this workshop and improve it for the future. I will hang out for a little bit for questions, but there is a seminar here at 4, so I'll move to the hallway in about like 10 minutes or so. But thank you all so much for coming.